The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across Chicago's bustling streets as Emily Carter adjusted her earbuds, the gentle melody of classical music providing a stark contrast to the city's chaotic symphony. Beside her, Max, her German shepherd, lay alert but relaxed on the bus floor, his intelligent eyes scanning each new passenger with measured interest. At 23, Emily had grown accustomed to the peculiar looks other passengers gave her companion, but Max's presence was non-negotiable, a promise she'd made to her father, Thomas Carter. Thomas wasn't just any overprotective parent. As a former K-9 unit handler for the Chicago Police Department, he understood the value of a well-trained companion. Max had been his partner before retiring, and now the shepherd had a new mission, protecting Thomas's only daughter. Emily often wondered if her father's insistence on Max accompanying her everywhere stemmed from the mysterious incident that had forced his early retirement 3 years ago, an event neither he nor his former colleagues ever discussed. The city bus wound its way through the concrete canyons of downtown Chicago, its experienced driver, Mike Reynolds, navigating the rush-hour traffic with practiced ease. Emily caught his gentle smile in the rearview mirror. After 2 years of riding his route to the university, they had developed a quiet friendship, built on nodded greetings and occasional small talk about the weather. As the bus stopped at the corner of Michigan Avenue, Emily's attention was drawn to a familiar figure stepping aboard, Sarah Chen, her childhood friend turned investigative journalist. Their eyes met, and Sarah's expression shifted from surprise to concern. She made her way through the crowded aisle, settling into the seat across from Emily. Max's tail wagged in recognition, but his posture remained vigilant. "I didn't expect to see you here," Sarah whispered, her voice barely audible over the bus's engine. "Have you checked your phone?" Emily frowned, pulling out her smartphone. 17 missed calls from her father. Her heart rate quickened as she scrolled through a series of cryptic text messages. "Don't take your usual route today. Call me immediately. Emily, this is urgent." Before she could process the meaning behind her father's messages, 2 men boarded the bus at the next stop. They were unremarkable in appearance, one in a gray business suit, the other wearing casual attire. But Max's reaction was immediate and unprecedented. The shepherd's muscles tensed, and a low growl rumbled in his throat. Emily placed a calming hand on his head, but for the first time since she'd known him, Max didn't relax at her touch. Sarah's hand found Emily's arm, her grip tight. "We need to get off at the next stop," she whispered, her journalist's instincts clearly firing warning signals. "There's something I need to tell you, something I've been investigating that involves your father." The bus lurched forward, and Emily noticed Mike's eyes in the rearview mirror again, but this time his usual friendly expression was replaced with concern. He'd noticed Max's unusual behavior. After all, the shepherd was a regular passenger on his route and had never shown aggression before. Emily's phone buzzed with another message from her father. "Whatever you do, don't get off the bus. Max knows what to do. Trust him." The 2 men had taken seats at opposite ends of the bus, a detail that might have seemed insignificant, if not for Max's continued tension and Sarah's obvious discomfort. Emily's mind raced through possibilities, remembering fragments of conversations she'd overheard at home, whispered phone calls her father thought she couldn't hear, and the mysterious meetings with his former colleagues that had become more frequent in recent weeks. Sarah leaned closer, her voice dropping even lower. "Your father's retirement wasn't voluntary, Emily. What happened 3 years ago? It's all connected to what's happening now. There's a reason he insisted on Max staying with you, and it wasn't just parental concern." If this story has caught your interest, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give it a like. Tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. Sarah's hands trembled as she pulled a folded newspaper clipping from her bag. The yellowed paper showed signs of frequent handling, its creases worn and edges frayed. Emily's eyes widened as she recognized the headline from 3 years ago, "Chicago K-9 Unit Uncovers Major Corporate Conspiracy." The article was accompanied by a photo of her father and a younger Max, but the details were frustratingly vague, citing ongoing investigations and sealed records. "Your father didn't just stumble upon corporate fraud, Emily," Sarah whispered, her eyes constantly darting between the 2 men who had boarded earlier. "He and Max uncovered something much bigger, something that powerful people wanted to keep hidden. The corporate angle was just a cover story. The bus swayed as it turned onto Lakeshore Drive, the afternoon sun glinting off Lake Michigan's surface. Mike adjusted his mirror again, his experienced eyes tracking more than just the traffic behind them. Emily noticed he was taking a slightly different route than usual, avoiding several regular stops. Max remained rigid beside her, his attention fixed on the man in the business suit, who kept checking his phone with increasing frequency. "I've spent the last year investigating what really happened," Sarah continued, her voice barely audible over the bus's engine. "It started with anonymous tips, then documents began appearing in my mailbox. 2 weeks ago I received this." She slipped a small USB drive into Emily's hand. "Your father's been protecting you all this time, Emily." The training he gave Max wasn't just standard K9 protocol, it was specialized programming for a very specific purpose. Emily's mind raced back to all the times she'd watched her father working with Max in their backyard, the commands she'd never heard him use with other dogs, the strange patterns of behavior he'd reinforced. She'd always assumed it was just thorough training, but now every memory took on a new significance. The man in casual clothes stood up, ostensibly to exit at the next stop, but his movement triggered an immediate response from Max. The shepherd's muscles bunched, ready to spring, but he remained in place, waiting. Emily remembered her father's words from years ago. "Max will never act without reason, and he'll never let you down. Trust his instincts. They're better than any security system." Sarah's hand tightened around Emily's arm. "Your father isn't just a retired cop, Emily. He was part of a specialized unit that worked with enhanced K9s, dogs trained to detect more than just contraband. Max is one of the last surviving members of that program, and he's been protecting more than just you." The USB drive felt heavy in Emily's palm. Her phone buzzed again, another message from her father. "The red notebook in your backpack. Open it now." Emily had carried that notebook for months, a gift from her father that she'd never used. With trembling fingers, she pulled it from her bag, understanding dawning as she saw the seemingly random numbers and letters scattered across its pages in her father's handwriting. Mike's voice suddenly came over the bus's intercom, calm but firm. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to roadwork ahead, we'll be taking an alternate route." Emily noticed his hands were steady on the wheel, but his knuckles were white from gripping it too tightly. The man in the business suit stood up, making his way toward the front of the bus while his companion moved toward the rear exit. Sarah pulled out her phone, quickly typing something before showing the screen to Emily. The message made her blood run cold. "They're not here for you. They're here for what Max has been guarding all along, and they don't know that I've already found it." The red notebook's pages seemed to pulse with hidden meaning as Emily's fingers traced the seemingly random sequences of numbers and letters. Her academic background in cryptography suddenly felt less like a coincidence and more like careful planning by her father. Sarah leaned closer, her reporter's instincts fully engaged as she studied the patterns. "Your father knew this day would come," Sarah whispered, her eyes darting between the notebook and the two men who were now positioned at opposite ends of the bus. The enhanced K9 program wasn't just about training dogs for detection. It was about creating guardians for something much more valuable, information that could change everything. Emily's mind raced as she began to recognize patterns in her father's handwriting. The numbers weren't random, they were coordinates, dates, and sequences that corresponded to specific locations throughout Chicago. Max's daily routes with her suddenly made sense. They weren't just walks or commutes, they were carefully planned patterns, maintaining surveillance over specific points in the city. Mike navigated the bus through increasingly unfamiliar streets, his years of experience evident in every smooth turn and calculated delay at traffic lights. Through the mirror, he caught Emily's eye and gave an almost imperceptible nod. She realized he wasn't just a friendly bus driver, he was part of whatever network her father had constructed. The man in the business suit pulled out his phone again, his frustration visible as he typed furiously. His companion at the back of the bus shifted uncomfortably, one hand inside his jacket. Max's ears twitched at every movement, but he remained perfectly still, following his training to the letter. Emily remembered her father's words. Max doesn't just protect, he preserves. Sarah carefully removed a small notebook from her bag, showing Emily a series of interviews she'd conducted over the past year. The enhanced K9 program was shut down because it was too successful, she explained quietly. These dogs, especially Max, developed abilities beyond what anyone expected. They could identify patterns in human behavior, predict intentions, and most importantly, they could store and protect information in ways that no computer system could match. Emily's hands trembled as she overlaid Sarah's notes with the patterns in her father's notebook. The USB drive felt warm in her pocket as pieces of the puzzle began falling into place. Max wasn't just carrying physical information. He was part of a living code, his behaviors and reactions forming a complex cipher that only her father fully understood. The bus turned onto a narrow street lined with old warehouses, the afternoon sun casting long shadows through the dusty windows. Emily noticed small marks on Max's collar that she'd never paid attention to before. Tiny scratches that, when viewed from the right angle, formed another layer of her father's complex security system. "Your father discovered something during his last case," Sarah continued, her voice dropping even lower. "Something that powerful people would do anything to keep hidden. But instead of trying to protect the information digitally, he found a better way. He encoded it into Max's training patterns, into the very way he moves and reacts. The daily walks, the bus routes, even the way he responds to certain people, it's all part of a living map." The man in casual clothes stood again, ostensibly to adjust his jacket, but Emily saw him exchange a quick glance with his companion. Max's muscles tensed slightly, but his eyes remained focused ahead, following a pattern that only he understood. Through the windows, Emily noticed they were heading towards the old industrial district where her father used to train the K9 units. A text message flashed on her phone. Not from her father this time, but from an unknown number. The program wasn't shut down, it evolved. "Max is the key to something bigger than any of us imagined. Trust the pattern." The message disappeared as quickly as it had appeared, leaving Emily with a growing realization of just how deep this mystery went. Sarah's hand found Emily's arm again, her grip urgent but controlled. "We're not just running from them, Emily. We're following a path that your father laid out years ago. Every bus ride, every walk with Max, they weren't just routine. They were preparation for this moment. The question is, are you ready to see where it leads?" The industrial district loomed ahead, its abandoned warehouses standing like silent sentinels against the darkening sky. Mike guided the bus through the narrow streets with practiced precision, each turn seeming random, but following a pattern that Emily was starting to recognize from her father's notebook. The two men had grown increasingly agitated, their carefully maintained facades beginning to crack under the pressure of Mike's unexpected route changes. "Your father wasn't just protecting information," Sarah explained, her voice steady despite the tension. "He was protecting a discovery that could revolutionize how we think about artificial intelligence and organic computing. The enhanced K9 program wasn't about training dogs. It was about understanding how canine intelligence could be used to create unhackable living data storage systems." Emily's fingers traced the patterns in the notebook as Max's behavior suddenly took on new meaning. Every head tilt, every shift in position wasn't just trained behavior, it was part of a complex organic algorithm. The way he'd always led her on specific routes to university, his seemingly random stops at certain corners, even his reactions to particular people, it was all part of a sophisticated data storage and transmission system. Mike's voice came over the intercom again, calm but carrying an undertone of urgency. "Ladies and gentlemen, due to unexpected maintenance ahead, we'll be making a brief stop. Please remain seated." As he spoke, Emily noticed him typing something into what appeared to be a regular bus routing system, but the reflection in his mirror revealed a different kind of interface altogether. The man in the business suit stood up abruptly, his composure finally breaking. "This bus needs to maintain its regular route," he announced, trying to sound authoritative. "There are passengers who need to make their connections." His companion at the back shifted nervously, clearly unsure of their next move. Sarah carefully slid her phone across to Emily, showing her a series of photographs. Documents, meeting minutes, and project reports, all bearing the same mysterious symbol she'd noticed on Max's collar. "The program didn't just enhance the dog's natural abilities," she whispered. "It found a way to use their neural patterns as living encryption keys. Max isn't just carrying information, he's processing it constantly, updating it, protecting it from anyone who might try to extract it forcefully." The bus turned into what appeared to be a dead end, But Mike pressed a sequence of buttons on his console, and a hidden entrance began to open in what had seemed to be a solid warehouse wall. Emily's phone buzzed with another message from her father. The convergence point. Remember what I taught you about Max's special command sequences? It's time. As the bus rolled into the warehouse, Emily noticed something else. Small markings on the walls that matched the patterns in her father's notebook. The entire building was part of the system, a physical manifestation of the code that Max had been helping maintain all these years. She realized that every bus ride, every walk, every seemingly routine day had been leading to this moment. The two men exchanged glances, their carefully planned operation unraveling as they realized they'd lost control of the situation. Max remained perfectly still, but Emily could sense him processing everything around them, his enhanced intelligence working in ways she was only beginning to understand. Sarah pulled out one final document, her hands steady as she showed it to Emily. Your father discovered that canine intelligence could be used to create a living quantum computing system, she explained. Max isn't just carrying data. He's part of a network that's been hiding in plain sight, processing and protecting information that could change the future of technology forever. The bus came to a stop in what appeared to be an ordinary warehouse, but Emily could see that every surface, every shadow, every angle was part of something larger. Mike turned in his seat, revealing a familiar symbol on his uniform that matched the one in her father's notebook. Your father said you'd figure it out eventually, he said with a gentle smile. The question is, are you ready to access the network? Inside the warehouse, a complex network of lights and shadows danced across the walls, creating patterns that matched the sequences in Emily's notebook. As her eyes adjusted to the dimmed lighting, she realized that what appeared to be ordinary warehouse markings were actually part of an elaborate visual coding system. Max's attention was focused on specific points in the room, his body language forming part of a complex authentication sequence. The network isn't just in the buildings or the routes, Sarah explained, her voice filled with wonder. It's in the movement patterns of every enhanced K9 unit still active in the city. They've been maintaining a living, breathing data network right under everyone's nose. She gestured to the walls, where subtle patterns shifted and changed, responding to Max's presence. Mike secured the bus and moved to join them, revealing a hidden tablet that displayed a complex series of intersecting routes and patterns. Your father designed this system to be unhackable because it requires something that can't be replicated. The unique neural patterns of enhanced canine intelligence combined with human intuition. The two men who had followed them stood awkwardly near the bus doors, their carefully constructed plans falling apart as they realized the true scope of what they were dealing with. The man in the business suit spoke first, his voice carrying a mix of frustration and admiration. We were told this was a simple data extraction operation. Nobody mentioned anything about a living network. Emily's fingers traced the patterns in her father's notebook as Max moved to specific points in the warehouse, each position corresponding to a sequence she had only now begun to understand. The USB drive in her pocket seemed to pulse with energy, and she realized it wasn't just a storage device. It was a key to accessing the network Max had been helping to maintain. The enhanced K9 program didn't fail, Sarah continued, showing Emily more documents on her phone. It evolved into something its creators never imagined possible. The dogs developed the ability to process and store information in ways that went beyond traditional computing. They became living quantum processors, capable of maintaining a network that exists in the space between digital and organic intelligence. Suddenly, the warehouse came alive with subtle pulses of light as other dogs began to arrive. German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, and other breeds, each accompanied by their handlers. Emily recognized some of them from her daily walks with Max, now understanding why these seemingly random encounters had felt choreographed. The man in casual clothes took a step forward, raising his hands in a gesture of surrender. We were hired to retrieve what we thought was stolen corporate data, he admitted, but this is something else entirely. His companion nodded in agreement, their demeanor shifting from threatening to astonished. Emily's phone lit up with a new message from her father, this one accompanied by a complex sequence of numbers that matched patterns she'd seen in the notebook. The network is ready, the message read. Max has been preparing for this moment since the day I retired. Use the command sequence I taught you. The one you thought was just a special trick for treats. As Emily looked around the warehouse, she saw how every bus route, every daily walk, every seemingly routine moment had been part of maintaining this incredible system. The other handlers and their dogs moved into position, forming a complex living circuit that somehow felt both ancient and futuristic. Sarah placed a hand on Emily's shoulder, her reporter's instincts giving way to genuine awe. "Your father didn't just create a security system," she whispered. "He found a way to bridge the gap between artificial and organic intelligence. The question is, are you ready to activate the full network? Because once you do, there's no going back. The world will change forever." The warehouse hummed with energy as Emily stood at the center of the gathered handlers and their enhanced K9 partners. Max positioned himself precisely in alignment with the other dogs, their collective presence creating an almost tangible field of intelligence that seemed to ripple through the air. The patterns in her father's notebook now made perfect sense. They weren't just coordinates or commands, they were the key to activating something unprecedented. "Your father discovered something remarkable during his last case," Sarah explained, her voice filled with reverence. "He realized that canine intelligence, when properly enhanced, could create quantum entanglement patterns that no computer could replicate. The dogs weren't just processing information, they were creating a new form of consciousness." Thomas Carter's final message appeared on Emily's phone. The network was never about security or data storage. It's about evolution, the next step in the relationship between humans, animals, and technology. Max and the others have been preparing the groundwork for years. Now it's time to bring it all together. Emily looked at the USB drive, understanding at last that it wasn't meant to be plugged into any computer. The drive's surface matched patterns on Max's collar, and as she held them close together, both began to emit a soft, pulsing light. The other handlers moved their dogs into position, forming a complex geometric pattern that matched the diagrams in the notebook. Mike stepped forward, his role finally becoming clear. "We're not just bus drivers or dog handlers," he explained. "We're nodes in the network, helping to maintain the connections across the city. Every route, every stop, every seemingly random encounter has been strengthening the field, preparing for this moment." The two men who had followed them watched in amazement as the warehouse's hidden systems came to life. "We were sent to stop this," the man in the suit admitted, "but we didn't understand what we were trying to prevent. This isn't a threat to national security, it's the next step in human evolution." Emily knelt beside Max, her hand finding the specific spot behind his ear that her father had taught her about years ago. "It's not about controlling the network," she said, understanding flooding through her. "It's about joining it." The enhanced K9 program didn't create guard dogs or living databases. It created bridges between different forms of consciousness. As she spoke the activation command, words she'd thought were just a clever trick, Max's eyes met hers with profound intelligence. Around them, the other dogs responded in harmony, their enhanced minds linking together in ways that science had never imagined possible. The warehouse filled with a soft, golden light as the network fully awakened for the first time. Sarah's documentation and research suddenly seemed secondary to the reality unfolding before them. This wasn't just a story to be reported, it was the beginning of something entirely new. The patterns in the notebook, the daily routes, the seemingly random encounters had all been preparation for this moment of convergence. Thomas Carter appeared at the warehouse entrance, his timing perfect as always. "I couldn't tell you everything," he said, walking towards Emily with pride in his eyes. "You had to discover it for yourself. The network needed to recognize you, to accept you as part of its consciousness. Max wasn't just protecting you, he was preparing you." As the network hummed to life around them, Emily understood the true magnitude of what her father had discovered. This wasn't about power or control. It was about connection, about bridging the gaps between different forms of intelligence to create something greater than the sum of its parts. The enhanced K9 program hadn't ended. It had evolved into humanity's next great leap forward. The warehouse, now alive with the combined consciousness of humans and enhanced canines, pulsed with possibility. This was just the beginning, the first step into a future where the boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence dissolved, creating a harmony that no one had thought possible. End of story. Dear readers, we hope you've enjoyed this journey into a world where the boundaries between human and animal intelligence blur into something extraordinary. The story of Emily, Max, and the Enhanced K9 Network is just one of many tales waiting to be told. If you've been captivated by this unique blend of technology and organic intelligence, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this story a like. Share your thoughts in the comments below. What would you do if you discovered your faithful companion was part of something greater? Join our community for more engaging stories that challenge the boundaries of what's possible. Remember, sometimes the most extraordinary discoveries are hiding in plain sight, just waiting for the right moment to be revealed. Until our next adventure, keep watching, keep wondering, and keep believing in the extraordinary.